Hi, I'm Ember Conley, your host for Political Peaks. I'm joined today with Park City Councilwoman Nan Worrell. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Amber. I'm happy to be here.
Today we're going to talk specifically around the Park City CARES Act grant funds. Can you give us a broad description of what these funds are and what they're used for?
Sure. So when CARES grant money comes to the state from the federal level, it's distributed to municipalities and counties, and it generally is distributed on the basis of population. And so there's been three tranches of funding, and for the first two tranches, Park City got roughly 250,000 in each of those tranches. Our mayor and city staff worked very closely with the League of Cities and Towns to try to change that for resort communities, because resort communities were impacted much more because of the lack of people being able to come into town, and so than other communities were. So thanks to the generosity and willingness of other mayors to redistribute some of their funding, we were able to have $2.2 million allocated to us in late October. The caveat with that was that the money needed to be spent by November 30th. So basically, it would have been retroactive kind of funds that businesses could use. The council talked about it and wanted to have our funding help to make businesses as whole as possible going into this winter season, because, as we all know, there's no way to predict what's going to be happening this winter.
So with the funds, and you've said that there was basically two different times that the city's been given that amount. There are, of course, recipients that have applied for the monies and then have been granted the monies. And some of those recipients, of course, the amounts range from 1,000 to a much greater amount, up to, I think the biggest one that I noticed was, I think, 75,000. And the recipients that had some of the bigger amounts were the Christian Center of Park City, the Community Foundation, the Ed Foundation. How were the actual amounts determined? Did the city have any say in the amounts, or was it really just what each individual entity applied for?
Yeah, let me just walk you through the process a little bit. We were fortunate that the Mountain Lands Association of Governments agreed to administer the process for us, and they had experience with that through some Summit County grants money that they'd helped to administer, as well as some other communities that they'd help work through that process. So they knew what they were doing, and because of the short time window that we had, we welcomed their help and needed their help. So people submitted their applications to MAG, Mountain Land Association of Governments, and they went through all of the applications for completeness and to make sure they complied with the criteria. You know, the funding had to be used for CARES related expenses. And the requests came in, the amount of requests, we had said we didn't want to granting or have applications for anything less than $2,500. And that was just because of the amount of paperwork that had to be done. And so we had applications all the way from $2,500 up to several $100,000. And each of those applications came with very different needs. The amounts were different. The requests for things that needed to be funded or were wanting to be reimbursed for were different from organization to organization. The easiest thing to do would have been to say, okay, we have this many requests, and actually the requests that we got totaled $7.4 million.
Wow.
And we only had 2.2 to be able to give away. So it would have been wonderful if we could have said, okay, everybody gets 25% of their ask, or whatever it was. But there were so many factors that came into play with each of the applications. So we had 179 applications. The criteria for small businesses was that they had to have less than 60 employees and they needed to be located within 84060. For nonprofits, they needed to be based in Summit County and had to identify the percentage of their clients that used that lived within 84060. So again, our intent was to focus the funding right here within Park City limits.
And with, you know, anytime that you have a grant, whether it's local, state, federal, you oftentimes have lots of accountability that you're required to do. What are the requirements for businesses to be able to report back that they've actually spent the money in the manner that they've asked to spend the money?
Right. So again, thank you to Mountain Lands Association of Governments because they're helping on the back end of this as well. So there will be an audit of all the fund use. The the city requested that we be able to extend our deadline from November 30th until the end of December for all the funds to be expended, and we were happy to learn that request has been granted. So businesses are going to have to submit information and documents back to MAG so that they can complete the process and they have the paper trail of how all the funds were used.
Well, as you are very well aware, we're continuing to see a rise in our COVID cases. The impact to our local businesses, our nonprofits, still is a tremendous impact to our local economy. Do you anticipate any more support from the federal level to help support our local businesses and nonprofits?
We are sure watching that closely, and at this point in time, you know, one day you're optimistic, and the next day you're like, it may maybe not happen. But we would certainly welcome the opportunity to be able to grant more money out to our local businesses. Yeah, each of the businesses and nonprofits had an opportunity to write a narrative to go along with their application about why they needed the funding. And some of the narratives that we read were absolutely heartbreaking. That talking about the physical toll, the mental toll, the emotional toll that it's taken on the business owner or on the nonprofits as they've tried to stay in business and try to make things happen. And we are so grateful for all of our small businesses that have been able to hang in there. And we just look forward to happier days down the road here.
Well, and we sure appreciate the leadership of the council, the support that we continue to feel here within Park City, within Summit County. I really do feel like you do, very hopeful that we're at least can see the end coming with our vaccines very near. And again, just thank you for your leadership and support to our local businesses and nonprofits.
Well, thank you. It was a quick process, and we just have to thank everybody for their nimbleness in responding on a very short time window and making the decisions. We wanted to be sure we were able to get the checks in people's hands by November 20th, and so that gave us less than a month to be able to put out the applications, work with MAG, vet everything, and get the checks in people's hands. So we're happy that we were able to do that.
That's fantastic. Nan Worrell, Park City Councilwoman, please stay safe, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Ember Conley, your host for Political Peaks. Remember to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Park City TV and over the air and on our Comcast channels.